Good afternoon, students. So today we'll see the remaining part of the web service security. So in this we are going to see the 3 points. First one is the token types, XML encryption, XML signature. So we'll see in detail these 3 points under the web service security. Token types. Web security is also called as WebSec, that is WSSec, addresses some of the basic problems in securing messages used in web services. So its main functions are: it defines XML elements that are used to communicate security tokens in the header of a SOAP message. Together with the XML encryption standard, it defines the syntax and processing rules used to encrypt one or more parts of a SOAP message. Together with the XML signature standard, it defines the syntax and processing rules used to create and represent a digital signature on one or more parts of a SOAP message. The first version of the Web Service Security Standard was created by the Organization for the Advancement of Structured Information Standards in 2004 with the input from IBM, Microsoft, and Verisign. Security related information is contained within a security element in a SOAP header. It specifies what operations are performed, such as signing, encryption, etc., and in what order. The security element includes security tokens, keys, signatures, timestamps, and security meta information. A security claim is a statement made about a subject's identity, signing key, a subject's privileges, etc. A claim may be made by the subject himself or by another party on behalf of the subject. One or more claims is or are represented by a security tokens. So here we will see the syntax of the security tokens. So common examples of security tokens are username plus password, an X.509 certificate, or a Kerberos ticket. The username plus password is one of the most commonly used security tokens. Now here if you see the syntax, the username we have specified by using the username token. We have specified the username as a John, that is end of the username. Then a password is password digest. Password type is equal to password digest, and the password is encrypted by using, the password is a hash function using a cryptographic hash SHA-1. So the security tokens containing usernames are pure text. Some security tokens may contain binary data such as signatures or keys. The binary security token element is used in that case. So now here is an example of the binary security tokens, how we can use it in a program. So now if you see here, binary security token is an element, the value type we have given. Now if you see, it's a certificate, whatever it's using is a X.509 version 3. And encoding type, whatever it has used is a base 64 binary. And whatever the data you'll be getting is a hash function. So it is encoded by or represented by using hexadecimal notation. So this is what regarding token types. Next we'll see it's XML encryption. XML encryption standard was developed by World Wide Web Consortium in 2002. It defines XML elements for representing encrypted data and keys used for encryption. One of its key attributes is that it allows encryption at different levels of granularity. So you can apply the encryption to an entire document, or it can be applied to a complete XML element within a document, or just to the content of an XML element. So you can apply this encryption to these 3 different levels. The standard permits any combination of elements within the body and or the header of a SOAP message to be encrypted. Now, the encrypted data element is used to represent the encrypted data in SOAP message. So, this encrypted data element contains a type attribute, indicates the type of the information encrypted, information about the algorithm used for encryption, cipher data, a reference to the cipher or a cipher itself, encrypted key used for encrypting, pre-shared key or a session key. If you see, this is an example of a XML encryption. So it is encrypted data is included. So here we are going to specify which encryption algorithm we are using for the encryption purpose. Then if you see here, we have used the AES 256 encryption algorithm for performing the encryption, which is placed within the encrypted data. Next, we have it's a cipher data, and it's a sub element, it's a cipher value. So this contains the actual cipher text of each encrypted element. Then the encryption key may be a pre-shared secret key between the communicating parties, or it may be a short term or a session key chosen by the sender. It may be chosen by the sender. So if suppose the session key is chosen by the sender, then it should be transmitted in an encrypted format. So for this purpose, this key should be included within this encrypted key element and placed in the SOAP header. So this is what the XML encryption information. So next we have it's a XML signature. XML signature standard was developed jointly by World Wide Web Consortium and IETF in 2002. It specifies the syntax for signatures and signature keys, while offering a rich set of options for signing XML document. The first step in generating an XML signature is canonicalization. The parts of a document that need to be signed are first transformed into the canonical form before computing their hashes. Canonicalization guarantees that syntactically identical documents produce the same serialized representation. Then signatures are included in the header of a SOAP message containing the document. More specifically, they are contained in a signature element in the header. The major elements and the sub-elements which are contained in a signature we'll see here. So first we have a signature element which is going to have a sub-element, signed info, signature value, key info. Signed info, again it is going to have a sub-elements like canonicalization method, signature method, reference. Then the reference is going to again have a sub-elements, transform, digest method, digest value. So we'll see the information of this. Signed info is a first element which we'll be using in this XML signature part. Within this element is included information about the canonicalization algorithm and signature algorithm employed. As an example of a signature algorithm is a RSA SH1, that is use of a SHA1 to perform the hash followed by an RSA private key operation on the hash value. A signature in the form of a message authentication code is also supported. So next we have is a signature value. So this signature value contains the digital signature value and it is applied on the entire signature element. So this is done by canonicalizing the signature element using canonicalization algorithm specified in the signed info sub-element. The signature is then generated using the signature algorithm specified in the signed info sub-element. Next one we have, it's a key info. This element typically includes a reference to key material that is needed for verifying the signature at the receiver end. For example, it may reference an X.509 certificate. The public key in the certificate would then be used to verify the signature. Now, if you see, so this is what exactly the signature element. Then it's a sub-element signed info. Signed info is going to have a three methods again: canonicalization method, signature method, reference, which is represented by using a URI. That is, if you see here, each resource to be signed has its own reference element identified by the URI attribute. Next we have, it's a transform. The transform element specifies an ordered list of processing steps that were applied to the referenced resource content before it was digested. Next we have, it's a digest value. Element carries the value of the digest of the referenced resource. Next we have, is a signature value. Element carries the value of the encrypted digest of the signed info element. Next is a key info element, indicates the key to be used to validate the signature. Possible forms for identification includes certificates, key names, and key agreement algorithms and information. So this is how exactly the signature element is represented in the SOAP header. Now, if you see, this is what exactly the example. First we have a signature element, then a signed info sub element, which is going to have a canonicalization method, algorithm to be used for that, signature method. So as I have told, it's RSA SH1 algorithm we have used, so that is included. Next we have, it's a reference URI, then transform, transfer algorithm, digest method algorithm, which is used, SHA1. This is what example of XML signature. The next we have is a SAML, that is security assertions markup language. So before studying this, what exactly security assertion markup language, first we'll see one example. Why do we require this SAML? So now consider a principal C who happens to be a long-term client of a service provider SP1. Each time C requests a service from SP1, he needs to be authenticated. So this can be done through the standard login, name, password route. Another possibility is for SP1 is to store a cookie in client's browser, which would be transparently dispatched to SP1 each time C visits SP1's website. So remember, cookie is nothing but a small amount of information which is used for authenticating the identity of the client and stored on a client machine. So the browser cookie could store in possibly encrypted format information about C's identity. Relevant attributes of C may also be stored in browser's cookie or at the server. Now suppose C wishes to use the service of another provider SP2. If C is a total stranger to SP2, on what basis might SP2 trust C? If, however, SP1 and SP2 share a true trust relationship, then SP2 could read the cookies stored in C's browser created by the SP1. So it can be represented like this: SP1 trusts C. If SP2 knows that SP1 trusts C, then SP2 might also be willing to trust C. So such a solution has serious problem. In particular, browsers do not allow cookies created by one server to be dispatched to a server in a different domain. So as to overcome these problems, they have implemented this SAML, that is security assertion markup language. So SAML is the XML based standard created to enable portable identities and the assertion these identities want to make. So this SAML is developed in May 2002 by OASIS, which is a standard that addresses the above said problems. It provides XML schema for expressing assertions about a principle. For examples, suppose SP1 might make the following assertions. SP1 authenticated C using password-based authentication on 1st February 2010 at 9:25:15 hours. So SP1 is an asserting party. In SAML terminology, it performs the role of identity provider. SP2 is a consumer of assertions and is referred to as a relying party. So there are some key questions need to be addressed here regarding when and how assertions are transmitted from asserting party to the relying party. So this SAML is going to define a standard message exchange protocol, specifies how it is transported. Then it is going to have one application called as a single sign-on. It is portable trust. A user whose identity is established and verified in one domain can invoke services in another domain. So this assertion is nothing but a claim, a statement, or a declaration of fact made by SAML authority. SAML defines three types of assertions. First one is authentication. Nothing but the subject was authenticated by a particular means at a particular time. So authentication statement is an assertion by identity provider that it did authenticate a principal C using a particular authentication method at a particular point of time. Authorization. The subject was granted or denied access to a specified resource. Authorization statement is an assertion by identity provider that a principal C is permitted to perform an action or operation O on a resource R. Then attributes. The subject is associated with the supplied attributes. It is an assertion by identity provider that the value of an attribute A for a principal C is a lowercase a. So these are the three different types of assertions. Then the common elements which will be used over here is the issuer, that is the name of the issuer. Then an XML signature for integrity protection and authentication of the issuer, but it's optional. Then a subject. The subject of the statements in the assertion condition must be evaluated when using assertion. So these all are the options. So only the required field is the issuer, that is name of the issuer. Now this is what example or a sample SAML assertion. It is an authentication statement containing the identities of the issuer and principal. A URL is used to identify the issuer and email address is used to identify the principal. Now if you see here, issuer, so here we have used a URL to identify the issuer, who is the issuer, what is his name, and etc. And then here we have used the email address so as to identify the principal, who is the principal. The statements indicate date and the time at which the principal was authenticated. Now if you see here line number 12, so here it has specified the date as well as time. So at what time this principal was authenticated, the information. So this is what the SAML code. So next we'll see one example of a SAML code. A useful application of a SAML, as I already told, it's a single sign-on. So to represent this application, that is single sign-on, we'll see one example. Now suppose there is a user Sandeep visits the website of his familiar travel agent Smart Travels in order to book a ticket to say Rio. Sandeep logs in and authenticates himself at the Smart Travel site. He indicates travel preferences including date and time of departure, budgetary constraints, etc. He is presented with a choice of airlines satisfying his requirements. After clicking on his preferred airline, Jet Air suppose, he is seamlessly directed to the website of that airline where he makes a reservation. Now suppose that Sandeep is a gold customer of a Smart Travels, a status contained on all customers of Smart Travels who have done business in excess of rupees 4 lakh over the last 4 years. Smart Travels has business relationship with several airlines, including Jet Air, which provides varying discounts to all of its gold customers. How is Jet Air expected to know that Sandeep is a gold customer of a Smart Travels and is eligible for the discounted price? For the sake of completeness, we enumerate all the steps involved in Sandeep's transaction like this. First, Sandeep logs in to the Smart Travel website and is authenticated. He indicates the destination, city, date, time of travel, price of ticket he is willing to pay. Smart Travels determines that Sandeep is a gold customer and presents a list of airlines that satisfy Sandeep's requirement. Sandeep clicks on the airline of interest, say Jet Air. Smart Travels create a SML assertion indicating that Sandeep has been authenticated using a login name password mechanism. Sandeep is a gold customer. Smart Travels creates an HTML form with two hidden inputs. The first, named SAML response, contains the signed SAML assertion. Second hidden input, called release state, contains the URL of the resource required by Sandeep. The relevant portion of the form is like this. When Sandeep's browser receives the form, it is immediately redirected to www.jetair.com/reservation/SAML consumer. The assertions are consumed by the Jet Air web server. It is now aware that Sandeep is a gold customer of its business partner, Smart Travels. It returns Sandeep a page containing information on its travel schedules and special fares. So this is how we can go for once the Sandeep is signed on. So these will be redirected to its friends request, that is they are going to have a business partners. There the website will be redirected and there you can fetch the information about the Sandeep. So other standards. So there are two other standards we are going to see here. One is a web service trust. Another is a web service security policy. So first we'll see it's a web service trust. Two endpoints of a web service may never have interacted with each other. To build trust between themselves, they could use an intermediary known to both parties who could create a SML token on behalf of the party that needs to be authenticated. It is just one way of establishing trust. So here we need a framework that is more powerful and general. So here is a wish list. Our framework should encompass different kinds of trust, that is direct trust and indirect trust, brokered by one or more intermediaries. Besides SAML tokens, we need to support other token types: simple password-based tokens, digital certificates, Kerberos tickets, etc. Our framework should be able to define messages for requesting security tokens from a security token service. We also need to define messages that communicate the security tokens. Finally, we need to validate tokens received from a client. So now consider an example over here. Here we have a I is nothing but a importer who wishes to import goods from an exporter E. Now I is an importer, E is an exporter in another country. I and E are not known to each other and so need to establish a trust relationship with each other. I and E have trust relationship with local banks IE and IB respectively. IB and EB do not have a direct trust relationship with each other. They each do, however, have a trust relationship with an intermediary, a well-known international bank called as a correspondent bank, that is CB. The trust relationships are summarized below. Now I here is first, I is going to have a trust on IB, which is a local international bank. Then IB is going to have a trust relationship with the correspondent bank, that is CB. Then exporter is going to have a trust relationship with the EB, which is a local bank again. Then EB is going to have a trust relationship on CB, that is correspondent bank. So based on this, we can create a trust among IB and EB, and through this IB and EB, we can establish a trust relationship between I and E. So web service trust could be used in the following manner. I authenticates himself to IB. Since IB and a CB trust each other, IB requests CB to issue a security token to be used by I. Then CB creates a security token and includes information such as maximum credit amount extended to I. CB acts as a security token service provider. CB communicates this token to IB, who forwards it to I. I dispatches the token to E. E requests EB to validate the token. EB may be able to validate the token on its own. If not, it sends it to the CB for validation. The success or a failure of a validation process is communicated by CB to E through EB. So this is what exactly the web service trust we can establish in this manner. So next one, it's a web security policy. Web security policy enables a web service to specify the security tokens it will accept for authentication and access control. The policies regarding authentication laid down by relevant entities may be as follows. An importer must authenticate himself to his local bank via a login name and a password. A local bank must authenticate itself to the global bank using a challenge response protocol in conjunction with a digital signature. An importer must authenticate himself to the given exporter through a SAML token signed by a global bank. So next one, we have it, the big picture. The most basic standard in providing security for web services is Web Service Sec, which already we have discussed. Web Service Secure Conversation is a standard that enables two principals to establish a session context. The state of a session includes a secret key that they share for the duration of the session. Setting up such a session is especially efficient if two parties need to exchange several messages during the session. This reduces the overhead of creating a shared secret for every message exchange. The idea of a session context is the application layer analog of the session in SSL or the IP Security Association. So WS Trust builds on WS Security. Similarly, WS Federation builds on WS Trust. It helps broker trust between entities in different security domains. So this is what exactly the last point of this chapter.